Hi. I'm sorry that the mindset of the unicum has been on hold for a while. As far as I know, Arcangelo has basically quit Armored Warfare, and I have needs of somebody who is a pretty good player and is a co-host. But anyway, today's topic will be the fact that I really don't enjoy playing MBTs as much as I enjoy playing, light tanks and AFVs. And this is because MBTs are slow, they're hit points based, they're not really as fun. But I've had to gravitate towards playing MBTs more, and this is because, well, I have to. Armored Warfare and World of Tanks and War Thunder does have this problem in which the people in both games don't enjoy getting shot. They don't lose in their hit points. They don't want to lose their hit points. And so this means that any class which is supposed to tank and push, like an MBT, is often discouraged. So what you'll see is that people will sit at the back, they won't want to get hit, they really don't enjoy pushing. So what this happens is there's a lot of lost games in which proactive classes such as light tanks and AFVs are able to dominate because the MBTs are not willing to actually play. As you can see here, I've been very aggressive in a Merkava, but I don't really want to say, hey, look at my gameplay. It's more of a talk session. So let me put through a scenario that you've doubtless been with. You are a M1A1 Abrams, and you are on pipelines. You have a bunch of light tanks and everything. So naturally speaking, you're going to have to go to the hill, and you're going to have to push that hill in hopes that your light tanks will help you. And this often brings into the whole perspective with the fact that teammates often aren't very willing to help you. But regardless of what happens, if you're in that MBT, you have to push that hill, because that is where MBTs have to go. If you don't even stall the enemy for time, your enemy's MBTs, if they're good, will simply just start rolling over the rest of your team, because now your enemies have the hit points, and your team doesn't. Armored Warfare is playing in MBTs can very much be more often than not trading hit points for time. The Merkava here has 3,350 hit points. That Centaur has 2,001. I have 1,000 more hit points than he does. That means I can take roughly 2 more hits than he can, but I also have armor to back it up as well. As you can see here, the sidearm of the Merkava, as we all know, is actually quite resistant to missiles. Not so much to cannons, but the Merkava is actually quite fun. So more often than not, good players usually achieve very high damage scores in their AFVs and stuff, spotting and stuff, and they usually do this quite a lot themselves. But sometimes I've actually seen is that even when you have a really good game going in an AFV, you'll still lose, and this is because your MBT players are crap. This is often seen in games where somebody in a VBL or Bradley or something has 8,000 to 9,000 damage and they've died, and their MBTs have very little damage and score. And this is because those MBT players are crap. They haven't pushed, they've been scared, they've been steadily pushed back by people who are aggressive. And this means is that while it looks like that person in the Bradley had a very good game, they had a very crap game, and that's because they basically just farmed damage until they died. So while it's nice to look at it and everything, most of the time it's not particularly substantive in the content and what they did. For instance, the VBL Ingray could just run around the map just about forever, spawning people, and occasionally the good player in a VBL will actually be able to win the game, but most of the time they don't. So I'm going to show you a quick game of me in an Armada 152, which it's a pretty good support tank. It's not really that great for doing pushes on its own because of the long reload, but you can push if you're good enough. Now, I would like you to see where the MBTs go in this game and where theirs don't. So while this is happening, I will continue to talk. So, Armored Warfare is a very aggressive game. Definitely the most aggressive out of the three. It has the quickest time to kill, it has the fastest firing guns, it has the biggest damage, and games usually don't have the 9 to 10 kills that you see Quickie Baby put out in World of Tanks, and this is simply because the game is fast enough, and the tiers are a lot more balanced against each other than, say, World of Tanks. So more often than not, players won't be one-shotting each other most of the time. But this still brings in a problem, as people have been conditioned by World of Tanks and War Thunder to be cautious and stay back. So this means, in relativity, that people are not using their class's strengths to the full, and those who can use their class's strengths to the full are more often than not playing AFVs, light tanks, sometimes tank destroyers, and that's simply because they give them the biggest potential to do damage. But these people most of the time are not playing MBTs, because MBTs more often than not are a playstyle that requires you to push, sometimes get killed, but more often than not you might not be using those huge damage scores that you used to in an AFE because you don't have the opportunities or the damage per minute or the DPS to do it. And that's not all MBTs though. Some, like the challengers, have pretty slow firing guns but have a ridiculous amount of armor. There are other tanks in the game that can push, for instance Capian, who is a good friend of mine and a very good player, is in a Ramka. The Ramka has good enough staying power and good enough armor and good enough protection to be able to push. And that's what I want to talk about as well, staying power. Staying power is not relative to armor, damage, speed or whatever. It's relative of all the parts of a vehicle that allows it to hold a position, push, or stay there and continue to deny the enemy. For instance, it's easy to push into a Sphinx player because you know you will do damage to him. He's got a low amount of hit points, he's got a low amount of armor, a good heat shell will kill him, and while he has a very high DPM, he won't be able to kill you outright. But if you're pushing against an Abrams, you know that your shells might not penetrate him. His shells might penetrate you. It will take a longer time to kill him. You have to aim for weak spots. For instance, if you're in a T90 B3 versus an M1A2, you're going to have to track him. You're going to have to use your superior DPM. You're going to have to get into a slugging fight with him. Whereas if it's against like a VBR or a striker or something, you can just load a couple of heat shells and that's that. But as usual, going back to the PAT thing, is a lot of people don't know this. So most of the time you will see MBTs in AFE positions, which happens a lot. As you can see here, the enemy didn't really give enough firepower to this part of the map. I've taken a lot of damage, but it's not something I'm particularly worried about. The X1 by the Angels player to me is probably going to be the most dangerous player of this match. As you can see, even though I have a low amount of hit points, I'm being very aggressive. The Armada has a very high DPS, which either stands for damage per second or damage per shot. In this case, the DPM is low, but the DPS is high. This is why it does the same DPM as, say, an Armada with a 125 gun. The Armada is more DPM based because it has a 6-second reload, while this has a 10-second. So this means that while the Armada has greater staying power because it can keep firing, this thing can push, but most of the time it's a second line tank, which is why I've joined up with Capian here, because we resonate with each other quite well. It's something else good players do quite a lot. I don't know. Wow, I can move the camera around with me. Okay. This is something good players do a lot, in that they wolf pack together, and most of the time they don't even need to, you see, I can take off half health of the Sphinx, but good players generally stay together. They don't need to talk to each other, throw text. Most of the time it's just a simple affirmative, click of the mouse, click of the map, there you go. But this is a very chronic issue among Armoured Warfare, and that's because a lot of games are lost simply because the MBTs don't push. So even though I very much enjoy playing AFEs and stuff, I have to play an MBT so my team can have a staying chance. This is very prevalent among skirmish, where people more often than not will suicide, and you will get some pretty moronic play. It's a very annoying issue, but there is nothing more frightening in the game than having a good MBT player push and push and push and push. That might be related to maternity, but we won't talk about that. I'm going to need to find another different replay here, maybe? Where are you? Replayers, hello. Right, there we are. This is just simply a lot of games I've been grinding out on the other account. But generally speaking, for the most part, the hell happened there? Here we go. So, what happens is that more often than not, really stupid people can, really stupid things can happen. And for the last part, I would like to just go on a bit of a rant. This is me asking for support here, but this is just a fun little high damage game for you guys to watch. I made a couple of mistakes which you will probably see at some point, but fundamental issue of Armored Warfare's MBT player base, they don't push, not aggressive enough, afraid, which basically singles a death knell for a lot of games. And Armored Warfare especially amongst the other two games in which if you're good enough you can more often than not push out a victory, but Armored Warfare is a lot more close, to say the least. So on this map, MBTs always have to rush towards the E and the 5 line. This is simply because it's the only place in which MBTs can go without usually being molested by other classes. It's a close environment that allows them to push, and more often than not determines the game. As you can see here, Mr. Type, after aim, over 10-second reload, 1000 damage. Now, they did actually have a winning shot here. That T-14 Armada should have been focusing me rather than the Leopard, because I'm the more vulnerable one here. I have a very vulnerable lower plate, I have a very long reload, and they don't work together, while that XM1A3 is actually piloted by a good player, and the Sphinx and the Wilk, I have no idea what they're doing. For the most part here, we don't actually need support. I'm doing a very high amount of damage. But yeah, this is very much a rant video for me. Of course, you see, fuck that Sphinx in particular. And then this is where things start going badly wrong, as you can see that playstyle there. And this can more often than not also be a little bit of a annoying little difference for other classes as well. They pick bad positions, they sit around, they camp, they don't move. I might have to do a video on that at some point as well. And you can see my mistakes coming up now, in which I don't aim well enough at this XM1A3. This is the first shot, and this is actually the last time he'll take damage. This is very much a problem of mine. And if I'd have killed that XM1A3, it's very likely we would have been able to win the game, as the rest of the enemy team is one-shots. So is this guy, and the shots just simply don't go in enough. And me and this 2EX aren't really supporting each other now. I wanted to. I have no idea what this Sphinx was thinking, to be honest. Right now I tried focus, and you're about to see a absolute rage-inducing moment here, as, yeah, that bounced. And end of game. But yeah, that's really a rant about the current state of the player base and everything. I hope you at least learned something, and it's to, if you're an MBT, you need to push, you need to be aggressive, not overly aggressive that you'll get killed, but remember, most of the time your team's success relies on you being able to stay in a position, spot the other MBTs if you can, but most of all, use your staying power. You are the only class with staying power in the game, except for a few other minor exceptions. So you should try to use that as much as you can. And remember that you can take a hit. Sometimes people will bounce on you, but don't be afraid. That's it for now, guys. Very much appreciated if you get a like on the video, subscribe maybe, click the bell icon for tips and tricks on how to play Armored Warfare game, guys, recommended vehicles, PvP, commentary such as this, and at the moment I'm trying to find enough money together to be able to not get my phone bill cut off, so if you'd like to help out with that, there will be a Streamlabs description below. I'm sorry for my very croaky voice at the moment, and I hope it will have been a sufficient quality enough for you to hear me clearly. Yeah, hormones and trying to make your voice female is a bitch. I'm sorry about that. But for now, take care, everyone, and see you next time. Bye.